Hey.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening.
Yeah, good evening. So this is Michael, Viking Reefing. This is Jay, Jay's Real Reef. Jay, Michael,
yeah.
Jay, because I know you guys haven't met. And Michael, we met
I don't think so, no. Yeah.
Yeah, good to meet you, Michael. Good to see you. Hope you're well.
Pleasure. I'm good. I've grabbed the beer and everything. So,
very good. I feel like I need to get a beer now. I feel like I should be drinking with you.
You should.
Yeah, maybe I should nip downstairs and just get a beer.
You go and get one.
A customary beer. Let me go get one. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the latest live stream on a Friday. Got a very special guest this evening. Got Michael from Viking Reefing. So, good evening to you.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thank you. So we'll just wait for Jay to come back, and then we'll go through, say hello to a few people that we've got in the chat as usual. I can see some regulars already. If you've got any questions, and I've certainly got quite a few questions from Michael, then please put them in the comments, and I'll try my best not to miss them like I usually do, and then come back and we'll go through it. Because as you'll see, Michael's got a stunning tank behind him. I spotted Michael's tank, I suppose it was quite a while ago via Instagram. Been following that quite a bit, and also, you know, you got a YouTube channel by the same name as well.
Good man. Cheers.
Cheers. Yes, it's gonna be a good night. Friday started here.
Obviously.
Cheers, my friend.
Right, before we dive in, I'm just gonna go for and say hello to a few people, because usually it takes about 15 minutes before I have to do this. So let's say hello to a few regulars. So hi, Tony. Yeah, if you could press the like button, that would be fantastic.
Have you told him to say that already?
No, I haven't. He was there before I was, but it's much appreciated is all I can say. Good evening, Haley, our regular admin.
Hi, Haley.
Johnny Boy, good evening to you. Got Techers as usual.
Yeah.
Hi, Howard.
Hey.
So, Howard, did you hook up with Jay about the boxes and everything else?
I don't know. Did he? Maybe he did. I can't remember. I don't think... To be honest, I don't think he did, but was it Howard that was going to help me out with the boxes, was it?
Yeah.
Oh, he's a gentleman. Gentleman in reefing is Howard. Thank you very much. But, there's plenty of time. It's the 20th of May, isn't it? It's the meet, so we've got plenty of time. So,
Michael, just to put you in the picture, I'm organising an event in the UK. So we don't have many reefing events in the UK. I did one last September, which was for about 50 reefers. And we've got another one on the 20th of May, which is for 100 reefers. So I've got to say, we're not going to do any more than one a year, because they take such amount of time and a balls ache as well to organise. So
yeah, I can imagine.
So I don't know why I ever agreed to it to begin with, to be fair. And then peer pressure to do another one. So got one organised on the 20th of May. And we've got some, UK vendors there, like the distributor for Ecotech, Nios, Neptune, Reef Factory, the ones who distribute in the UK, which are relatively new brand.
TMC, is TMC there as well?
TMC are there as well, which is, I think they probably got about 70% of the market share in the UK for fish, and also do a lot on corals. We've got a tank builder who is Mickey, and he's in the chat. So MBM, he's coming down from north of England. We've got Aquaprint UK. So we've got a mix of quite big.
Tropic Marine, man. Tropic Marine.
Well, Tropic Marine are distributed by TMC. So the brand is the UK distributors are the ones that will be there, rather than I suppose the parent company. So we've got a mix of some small businesses from the UK who do things like frag racks, stuff like that, custom built aquariums. And a lady called Ches who does fantastic UV artwork. Stuff actually pops. So some of the names in reefing that you would recognise, like Ecotech and Nios and people like that. So it's the second one that I've arranged, and just in the middle of arranging it at the moment. So fingers crossed it will go well. But do you have many reefing events in Sweden at all?
No. You're doing a lot better than we are. I've been in reefing for over 2 decades now, and during that time we've had approximately 0 events.
Wow.
No events.
There's nothing.
Wow.
Is it quite a big hobby in in Sweden? Is it
quite? It used to be.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
It used to be quite a big hobby when I got into it, like the very early 2000s, just at the turn of the millennium. It was quite big. There were a bunch of reefing shops, like little towns scattered all over the place. Then it had a really big dip, so it almost wiped out the entire reefing hobby here in Sweden. There was just, I believe, 2 stores left at one point, but it has had kind of a renaissance lately. So there's been new stores popping up, and I think we're like 10 stores now, at least, that carry most of the salt water. So that's very nice. Even freaking Norwegians are doing better than us. I was invited to a reefing convention called Reef Meet this past autumn. So, and there are a lot less people in Norway than there are in Sweden. So that's kind of embarrassing.
Do you cross the border to go to their reef meets and join with them, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, in Norway.
Yeah, fortunately I was a speaker, so they flew me out, so it was very little hassle for me.
Oh, nice.
Well, that's good.
I just want to, I do actually have a full head. This light is just kind of screwing me up, so if I do this, you can see it's actually round.
It just looked like you had a halo, that's all.
Yeah.
The cone head effect.
Cone head effect.
Right, I got distracted as always. So Howard, yes, I'll hook you up with Jay and we can sort that out for you. Hi Russell, good evening to you.
Evening, Russell.
Skids is in the house, good to see you as always. Cotty's Reef, good evening to you. Hiya Julian. Chris of the Allen, good evening to you. Yes. We've got Drippy Reef Geek. I'm sure we'll have some comments later from Drippy, but always good to see you. And this is one of the guys who's been constantly pressuring me to put on an event, and it worked. Hi, Ava Haley. Hiya. Trundley's Reef. Good evening to you.
Good to see you.
UKM 120. Good evening, and hi, Stuart. And Mickey Boy. Look forward to meeting you on the 20th. He's bringing a couple of tanks down, so that'll be good. We've got Reef 216, Southeast Reefer, good evening to you. And there's Ryan, good evening to you. Right, let's see who I've missed. PJ Goblin, good evening. Yeah. Marek's in the house.
All the regulars are in. All the regulars.
Yes.
Friday.
Scott,
come to see
I'm hoping Scott's going to come down to Love to Reef. Be good to see him again. Hiya, Darren.
I'm sure Darren's going to Love to Reef as well, I think.
He is, yeah. Darren will be there. John, hiya, John.
Evening, John.
Black Pearl Reef. Not seen you for a while. Good evening. Hope you're doing well.
Long time no see.
Absolutely. Right, I'm just going down. Sky Marine, good evening to you. Critical Reef, good to see Viking Reef on. Been a subscriber for quite a while.
Oh.
And also we have Cornish Reefner. So, right, we're up to date with the chat. So, as I say, get some questions in if you've got some questions. In the meantime, Michael, do you want us to tell us a little bit about your tank, the hobby for you? I know you mentioned, near the top, you've been in the hobby since early 2000s.
Yeah. I saw one question in the chat that I thought I would just grab before I forget. Ryan, my new aquacolonies are doing great. Thank you for asking. I used to have them sitting down here just to light acclimatize. And I've now snipped them off those horrible cement blocks that we're sitting on and do them on the rockwork, which is a major pain in the ass when it comes to dealing with big colonies. So it was, took some time and a lot of swearing and a lot of glue and epoxy.
Yeah. So is that where you? Because I saw the video where you obviously 8 or 10 colonies you got in. So do you usually get them imported or brought in from another country? Is that the best source for you?
Since corals here in Sweden are extremely expensive for whatever reason. So let's say that the stuff that I bought would cost me about 300 euros or something here in Sweden, and I bought those from I have a partnership with a vendor in Italy called Coral Gardens, and the retail price on those were about 104 euros a pop. So it's a hell of a lot of big difference, and the quality of his stuff is amazing. I have a video where I actually visited them this past summer, and I believe they have like 800 or something SPS colonies in stock on regular. So yeah, they have a very impressive setup. So a general import from them, and a vendor in Portugal called Ecker Corals. I find that it's hard to get decent quality here inside of Sweden, unfortunately, or at least not in. If it is decent quality, they're going to be so bleeding expensive that really put a hole in your wallet.
Yeah. I suppose it's that economies of scale, isn't it? If the hobby's quite small, when they're importing, they may not bring it in as such bulk, and therefore they haven't got the sales. Therefore, they have to put the unit price of everything.
Exactly.
It's a vicious circle because hobbyists like yourself will go overseas because it's cheaper. So therefore, it's chicken and egg in a way. But I get the fact as a hobbyist, why you would go to, if you got a good quality supplier overseas, why wouldn't you use that?
And there's also an issue because coral vendors abroad, they like the exporters, they basically put a premium on the people who are buying a lot, so they have access to the nicest pieces as well. So if you're not buying a lot, you get a lot of brown shit, basically, and not that high quality stuff.
Yeah.
So you buy direct and then you pay the tax, the import tax into Sweden. Is that how
No, I don't really buy direct from the exporters per se. I buy from a vendor in Italy who imports.
Yeah. And then
since it's in the EU, I don't have to pay an import tax or anything like that.
Okay.
So that's nice and easy because now we've got Brexit. You have to have CITES. It's no different whether it be UK, so EU or Indo or anywhere like that. So you haven't got that freedom of movement of goods.
I have imported corals directly from the vendors in like Bali and stuff as well, because I had a very short run during my college days when I worked in a reefing shop. So we used to bring in colonies, but that's such a pain in the ass. You have to mess around with all of the CITES things. The different government agencies here in Sweden, you have to go to the darn airport, pick them up, and you're stuck there for like 5 hours and just wondering where the hell is my box and stuff like that. So if I can avoid that, I'm a happy camper.
Absolutely. So obviously you don't have to pick them up; they'll come straight to your door, which helps, isn't it? Which is great.
Definitely, but it's always kind of nerve-wracking since all the shippers suck. So I'm always pacing around here, just waiting for my darn box to show up. So it's both good and bad.
Yeah, because I suppose the worst thing for you is that they don't turn up, as it is for us. If we ship things backwards and forwards in the UK, last thing is either they ring on the bell and you don't hear it, or they don't turn up and then it sits overnight somewhere, and you're thinking, are the heat packs going to last overnight? Another day. That kind of thing.
Luckily, it seems like the local shippers here suck. There doesn't seem to be any big issues in other places in Sweden. But the vendor has learned from that, so now he packs them in huge boxes and huge amounts of water and stuff. So if something happens, they can sit overnight in a warehouse, no problem.
Yeah, instead of okay. Because I did see it. The box was big, and then obviously quite a lot of water in there. I like the way is that they were on some polystyrene or something that floats.
Exactly.
So if they was on the side, they would then change angle as well. So they weren't in a fixed position. So regardless of what way the box would be, they should be okay because they would just adjust to the gravity of it.
The funny thing is, then when we brought in SPS from Indo 20 years ago or something, no, not 20 years, 15 years ago, they shipped them damp with wet newspapers around them. And they were doing fine.
So it just shows you, doesn't it? They just need a bit of moisture.
Yeah.
No, nothing to regulate the temperature, just an insulated box.
Yeah.
And they were fine.
But I suppose the more water you put in, the more weight it is, therefore more it costs, doesn't it?
Yeah,
probably that in there as well, wasn't it?
And there's the added issue with if a coral starts like kind of dying or something, it pollutes the entire water volume that it sits in. If just one part of the coral starts dying off when it's just damp, it won't spread to the entire colony. That's how I got it explained to me by the exporters.
That makes sense.
But it's probably a price thing, mostly.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Right. Okay. So I've got a question here. How are you finding your Majestic Angel with your corals? Because I think you must probably get a lot of questions about angels and SPS in particular.
Constantly. My standard response is that they're not obligate corallivores. They don't eat really corals in the wild. They eat sponges and they eat algae. If they'll pick at corals, just like slime and stuff like that, but they don't actually eat corals in the wild as part of the natural diet. So I feed a lot in my tank, and I have a big tank, and I can spread out the damage. So I basically have no problems putting any angels in here, any butterflies or anything like that. So completely fine. It does no damage whatsoever. None of the angels do.
So do you find, because you've got quite a big range of SPS, that if they have a little nip at different ones, it had no impact because you've got so many? So
yeah,
there's the SPS are spread across the tank as well as the angels.
You need to spread out the damage. So if I had 2 frags and a small little like Red Sea Reefer 250 or something, and I put a bunch of angels in there, they would wipe out those frags in a second, because they won't eat them, but they'll just stress them because they pick at the slime coats. But so all the damage is spread out over, I believe I have like 35 colonies in here or something. So it's not an issue whatsoever. And high feeding helps as well. Staves off the worst of the picking.
Yeah, you mentioned about sponges, because I watched, I don't think it was your last video, but the last couple, when you talked about the fish, you'd done a tour of your fish. I was intrigued when you was talking about sponges, because I haven't really heard too much about people propagating sponges to feed to their fish.
Yeah, I've not heard of this either. This is unusual.
Yeah, so I'll grab a prop. I'll be back in like 2 seconds.
Okay. We'll just admire the tank, because that is an absolutely stunning tank. One of the best around.
Got to be one of the best on the internet. It is an incredible reef tank, isn't it?
Yeah,
absolutely incredible.
So there's different ways to feed sponge. I have a cryptic section in my sump where I have a bunch of live rock, and I grow sponges on that. So every now and again, I'll grab a piece of live rock from the sump and I put it in the tank, and they'll just feed on live sponge from that. Sponge grows relatively quickly, so I have a constant supply in there. But I also feed angel formula from Ocean Nutrition's, the frozen food, which contains sponge as well. But recently, I've started feeding this, and I'm not in any way sponsored by these guys, Panteray, but they have a pellet that contains sponge, basically. And they also have another one which contains coral polyps. Because I'm planning on some corallivore butterflies in the future, so I will be feeding them those, and some orange-spotted filefish and stuff like that as well.
So actually giving them what they want in terms of sponge. And so is it broken down into pellets or flakes or formula?
Yeah, this is pellets.
So they both are?
Yeah, they both are. Let's see here, like that.
Okay.
Yes, yeah.
I suppose they must be fairly big, because the fish are usually, angelfish are usually bigger fish, aren't they?
Yeah.
Unless you get the odd one. Like I've got a cherub angel in here, but it's a small tank and it's only about 1.5 inches, and it won't grow much bigger.
But they're quite moist and fragile, so you can like just grind them up between your fingers if you have smaller fish as well. So
yeah, because what I find, because I've got quite a bit of algae, it's a relatively new tank, 8 months. I got quite a lot of algae on the back of the tank, and I must admit I've left it because the cherub is just constantly picking at that, and that seems to keep it happy, as well as feeding it a couple of times. So I think if you've got a natural source of algae for them, I must admit I haven't thought about sponges, but I mean I haven't got much in here. I've got a couple of chalice, I haven't got any SPS, and I haven't seen the cherub touch any of the corals at all. But I've got a couple of quite big ones, so actually if he did, it probably wouldn't notice too much. And if it got too bad, I can always whip it out and put it into another tank anyway. So that's the advantage of having more than one tank. If there's an issue, you can always take the coral out, can't you? So the thing that I'm intrigued about is the mix of fish, because you've got, if I remember rightly, you've got angels, you've got a Moorish idol, and you also got an Achilles.
Yeah,
some of the more advanced fish, should we say, and some that could easily bicker. And also you've got a copper band, just reminded me, just seen it in the background. How have you got all those kind of, playing good, shall we say?
I threaten them with violence daily. No, but I've introduced them in order of aggression. So, well, at least to a point. So I had when I had my old tank, I had a stocking list, which I followed religiously. So I started off with the copper band and the regal angel, and just basically moved up in terms of aggression until I finally managed to get to the Achilles. But that plan kind of failed because then I got a bigger tank, and then I started adding stuff afterwards. And I've actually had a huge issue with the Achilles. It killed a Moorish idol in the past because it's extremely aggressive when I introduce new fish. Most of the angels are fine. The goldflake angel is a bit of a butthead sometimes, but the Achilles is the main offender in terms of squabbling in this tank. So what I've done now is I use a acclimation box. I bought a huge big thing. It's like 50 centimeters times 30 centimeters times 30 centimeters. And I have the new fish in there for at least a week, and until I can see the aggression die down. And then I basically release them in the middle of the night. So when the lights come back on, it seems like the Achilles is like none the wiser, or at least not as aggressive. Mm. But high feeding helps. If I let my auto feeder run dry or something, I'll instantly see more aggression as well, because then there's more natural just competition for food and stuff like that.
Yeah. So we're trying to kind of, I suppose, compete and bully others so that they get it and someone else doesn't. And I saw in your video about the impact of flow as well.
Yeah, flow is also a huge factor. It seems like if you turn down the flow, they have nothing to do except squabble, especially the Achilles, for whatever reason. I saw a marked decrease in aggression when I upgraded my flow a couple of months ago from the Achilles. He's a much better guy to deal with now than when I kind of had on the low side in terms of flow.
That's a very interesting link, isn't it?
Yeah.
You notice the difference with the flow and the interactions with the fish. It's something you don't really think about, isn't it, in terms of those kind of interactions. But obviously, they trigger the feeding response. So they think that when the flow drops, it's feeding time. Therefore, the competition rises. Is that what they?
I think they're just preoccupied with fighting the flow or something.
Fighting the flow, yeah, keeps them busy.
They might just get tired from exercising all day, so they don't have an energy left to get into fisticuffs with each other.
I did wonder if that's the case, because they're actually expending more energy, aren't they, and having to think about the swimming rather than, I haven't got to think about that. Oh, there's someone I can attack, kind of thing. I don't know, maybe as simple as that. You just don't know, do you? But is that something you just stumbled across then, that you turn the flow maybe for your SPS and get your corals more flowing and just
not really. I used to keep predatory freshwater fish in the past, like real tank busters, those African what are they called, tigerfish with huge big chompers. Asian arowanas. I have one tattooed here.
Nice.
And really aggressive fish, and I found that that's where I got that idea, because when I had a bunch of African tigerfish, they would just slice up everything in the tank if the flow got too low. Like when my canister filter started getting clogged up or something like that, they would just go nuts. And as soon as I got the flow back on point, they would all calm down.
So you learned from there. And there's a question about fish around how is it hard to get fish as it is corals where you are?
No, fish is a lot easier. I have a great local fish store about a 7 minutes drive from me, which is the only place where I shop. And he's awesome at finding all these weird fish for me.
Yeah. Which one's your particular favorite that you've got at the moment? Which one is?
I believe it's probably the Regal Angel. It's probably my favorite one. I went diving in the Red Sea 25 years ago with my dad, and I saw them for the first time and was just enthralled with their beauty. And I think they've basically been my favorite fish ever since. Yeah,
stunning choice of fish. And that link as well to seeing it in the Red Sea, and now it's in your reef tank and you watch it. Quite a pleasure, isn't it, to have that there?
Definitely. I still have pictures from our diving trip, so that's also fun.
Yeah.
And I saw you have an emperor as well, don't you? But is that a juvenile? Is it starting to turn? Because I know when they're juveniles, the patterns are superb, but then they change. They're not so beautiful as they turn to adults.
Yeah, it's a juvenile, or it's heading into subadulthood, I guess, because I can see some color changes on it. This is the first Emperor I've ever owned, so it's going to be very interesting to see it change into an adult. But it started grunting now, which is kind of funny. So when I approached the tank, you can hear the grunt. It's kind of funny. I was like, what the hell was that? I thought the pump was crapping out or something on me at first, but I realized it was that guy.
So I noticed that I had a Regal Tang, and that used to do that as well. It was more a clicking noise that I got from the Regal, mostly as lights were going down. It's kind of like I don't know if it's a protection or what. I'm not too sure.
Thing or something.
Yeah, it could be territorial or just a protection or something triggers, because it's completely different. I've got a tortoise, and the tortoise, when you go near it, it gives out a big. So actually, if I'm trying to find, because it stays in the garden all of the time, all over the winter, so I just change it.
Right.
But it does exactly that. And if I'm trying to find it, because you've got a lot of foxes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And what we tend to do is we've got to try and find it evening. If you're going close to it because you hear it, and then we can kind of sometimes move it. Otherwise, sometimes we found it on its back in the morning because of the foxes and stuff like that. But until my wife's had the tortoise she's had it for like 40 odd years, so it's quite precious to us.
Yeah,
I mean, we don't know how long it is.
Mentioned you've had a tortoise. That's quite unusual.
Yeah, because you can't really get them, and if people do, they keep them in the house. No, it's only kind of that size.
All right, okay.
And it must be at least 40 years old. But it's and it moves really fast. It's really weird. And if you go out the garden, it walks up to you. It's bizarre.
Pretty cool.
But sorry, only reason I got onto that because that makes some noise when the dog goes near it or you go near it. It's similar to that, just as protection. But then you think, well, why are you doing that? Because you're giving the game away.
Yeah, definitely.
Tell everybody where he is.
Yeah.
What's feeding? That's what it is.
Absolutely. So here I'm introducing Steve.
How's it going?
Michael, Steve. Steve is joining us for a little while.
I am. How's it going, my friend?
Got his family coming over.
I have. How's it going?
Yeah, really good. Just hearing all about Michael's really tank and the different mix of fish and things like that.
I know it's crazy. His fish, how he manages to keep them all in harmony. It's crazy, mate, honestly.
I've learned 2 tips so far, Steve.
Yeah.
One, keep the flow up to wear out the naughty fish.
Right.
So if they're aggressive, you tie them out. We do that at school with the year 9s, who like the year 9 boys who are really like a bit edgy in lesson.
Boys,
yeah, wear them out. So basically, wear out your fish with the flow.
Yeah.
And the other one is to feed sponges. So Michael cultivates sponge in the sump, and then feeds the angelfish. I've never heard of that.
No.
Also, you've got pellets as well, haven't you? He's starting to feed these pellets as well. But
yeah, exactly. But you forgot threatening them with violence.
Violence as well,
yeah. So, I mean, that's the problem that I had, to be honest, was especially with the tangs. Not so much, the tangs that look more like the Dory tangs, the Regal tangs and the brown tangs. They always seem to have like a lot more aggression, once they've established themselves in a reef tank. Yeah. Whereas I find, like say, the yellow tangs, the gem tangs, those ones that look that genus, that shape, they seem to keep themselves to themselves. In my experience, anyway, my yellow tang never did anything. He was like, listen, I'm laid back. I don't want to have any trouble in this tank. I'll leave it like that. Whereas the brown tang that I had, and then the other tang that I just, that I've had, they were just like, once they've established themselves, they were just at it every time. They were, mate, they were just wanted to just like kill anything. They was in this like rampage of just wanted to kill or basically harm any other fish. They were just hounding them to death. That's what they did. You know what I mean? And it was just like, it was just so frustrating because you want them all to live in harmony. You want them all to get on, but it's just like a hierarchy in it. They try to establish themselves, and if you've not got a big enough tank, then that's probably the main concern. Really, is the tank size. Do you know what I mean, for the fish that you have, and that's what it is probably with me. I've only got 350, so I mean one tank is enough. But when that one tank turns rogue and he wants to go after everything, then it's very difficult. You know what I mean? And it's just one of those problems. But thankfully, I managed to get him out. No harm done, and he's been rehomed, so in a bigger tank. So that's the main thing. But I just find it so difficult to keep them. They're all right for the beginning, and then they just seem to be a bit boisterous with it. But it is what it is.
I find the Zebrasoma tanks are fairly chill. They generally don't cause a ruckus in your tank, but the Arcanthorus tanks are assholes by and large.
I agree.
In terms of inter-tank aggression, I find having 2 algae clips really does help because you lessen the competition for food, and you can like split them up in different type of spots of the tank as well.
So you put it at either end of the tanks, either end, so therefore you're naturally splitting them, aren't you? And then you've got the other feeds that are going in, so you're kind of keeping them occupied for a period of time.
Yeah.
I suppose, Steve, because I saw the video the other day, but I was amazed about the fact of getting the flow really high, and that takes the aggression as well, which we were saying, why would that? Is it because it wears them out? Is it because they're thinking about something else and they're not thinking about beating something up? But it's quite intriguing. And also Michael's saying that he's got freshwater tanks where he's had to do the same as well, and that's where he's learning from. Wow. There's a couple of things. Michael, do you find that the sponges, the tangs eat the sponges as well? Or is it pretty much the angelfish?
Not to any big extent. They might just pick at them, but I guess there might be some algae on those rocks as well. But it's mainly the angelfish and the Moorish idol.
Right. These sponges that you have, I mean, I have a lot of sponge in mine. I have the white sponge, but then I also have the black sponge, which people say is, you shouldn't really have the black sponge, in your tank and stuff like that. But I have tons of white sponge all over the show. Is there any other things that other than angelfish that eat the sponges that you know of, or do I have to manually remove it? Is it bad to have in an aquarium? If nothing removes it, or I don't know.
I guess if it just runs rampant for whatever reason, for example, let's say that you have a lot of silicates in your water, I guess the sponge could take over potentially or something. I've never really found sponge to be an issue. Some people say that it can give off some sort of toxins that can inhibit coral growth. I'm not entirely sure of that. I don't really think it's a big issue. In terms of stuff that eats the sponge, it's mostly angelfish, really, and butterfly fish as well.
Right. Butterfly fish, that's unusual. I didn't know that would be the case. Yeah, because like I said, I have so much sponge. It's something I've never really shown people on my tap. But then again, I've never really thought about it, like to show. I mean, not many people want to know much about sponges in one sense, so, but all around one side of my rock, especially the left side where my clams are, seems to it developed a mixture of like black sponge and white sponge. Do you know what I mean? And they're growing. It's growing all over the rock, but it's not growing in a crazy way. It's just growing, over time. But bear in mind, like my tank's 4 years old, so it's been growing over that time, and it's nowhere near covered the rock, so it's slow growing, whatever sponge it is, but there is definitely sponge there for sure. You know what I mean? And it's, I always think to myself, should I remove it manually?
No, it filters your water as well,
or is there anything?
It'll filter your water as well. So it changes the water column.
That's it.
They're really good. I mean, I only have the pineapple sponges. I don't know that. Obviously, there are different species of sponges. Which ones have you got there, Michael? Is it the?
I've got pineapple sponges and some, but the main variety is a yellow one that just carpets the entire rock.
And that grows on limestone, you say?
Yep.
So you kind of cultivate on limestone. Yep. In fact, most coral reefs are limestone, aren't they, to start with? So
they are.
That obviously gives it the minerals that it needs. I've never heard of this, and obviously I've not been in the hobby for very long. But people kind of growing sponges to feed, angels and butterflies. I think that's,
it's very interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like people have refugiums and stuff like that to grow the algae. I've never heard of people growing their own sponge.
No,
as a food source.
No. So when you look at the pantry, so go on.
You don't have to do anything to grow it as well. It just threw some rocks in there and then just grows on its own. So it's like not like a major hassle.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
But I suppose if you look at it, angelfish, people love to get angelfish, but a lot of people stay away from angelfish, don't they? Because of the ability to eat coral and stuff.
Don't have the sponges to feed them, basically.
And absolutely, yeah. So therefore, if more people had angelfish, then maybe that would be more common.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did not know until this live stream to feed angelfish sponge.
No.
I did not know that.
No.
So that's probably why people have problems.
And I mean, Yeah, that's a major contributing factor why, like, the Majestic Angel was considered to be basically impossible to keep a couple of decades ago. But now they're really easy.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
So how do you keep such a clean but also healthy tank? This is what I want to know. So your photographs are immaculate. There's like a showroom. There's no sandbed, obviously. There's crystal clear water, crystal clear sandbed.
Yeah.
But clearly there's nutrients in there. You haven't got dinoflagellates or anything like that. How are you getting the balance between a pristine tank and a healthy tank? Because that is very hard.
Just dose chlorine and that's the secret. Chlorine. No, I don't. No, don't put chlorine in
Bloody hell.
No, but I would say that it's a combination because I have a lot of herbivores. I do a lot of manual maintenance on the sandbed to remove all, because that's a misconception in reefing. There are people who say, you're not supposed to touch your sandbed. There's some sort of magic that happens in your sandbed so that it's self-cleaning somehow, and other nonsense like this. It's basically like a litter box, so if you don't touch it, it'll just fill up to the brim with crap, and that will, over time, kind of screw up your tank. It's a misconception based in kind of fact, because a long time ago we had those deep sandbeds, and you really shouldn't be touching those because they were like... what's the English word for it? Sulfur gas in them. So, it's like to nuke your tank. But so just keep your sandbed clean. Have a lot of herbivores.
Over every week. The sandbed. What's the maintenance routine on the sandbed? Every week, every day? Are you turning it over?
I do have a bunch of little critters that helps me. Gobies, conches, and stuff like that. I don't do manual water changes anymore because I have that taken care of automatically. But I will siphon out the sandbed like once a month or something like that. But what I do is that I get into the tank once a week and I stir it all up to get all the detritus up in the water column. And then I do something called bubble scrubbing, which is basically hook an air stone before, like on your return pump. So it just fills the entire tank with micro bubbles, which attaches to the little pieces of detritus, makes them rise up to the top, and then over into the overflow they go and gets filtered out.
See, I do that, but I do that with my wave maker. So instead of putting an air stone in, I used to just set it on 100%, pull it out so it was like get taken in the air, and then put half of it in the water, and it does exactly the same as what you do, and yet you're just using a pump as opposed to, like you said, like the thing. But I do exactly the same on that. I used to do it a lot, but I've gone off it. I've not really, I say gone off it. I've not done it as often as I should do, but it definitely helps, especially like SPS. It definitely helps the SPS polyp extension and all that comes out a lot more, I find, the following day mainly. But I should really get back into that routine. But it's definitely one thing that people should try for sure.
That sounds quite aggressive cleaning. How do you dose bacteria then as well, Michael? Because obviously you're going to take a lot of bacteria then.
I do that now. I guess my belief is that most of the bacteria are attached to surfaces. I don't think that you're getting rid of that much bacteria when if you're stirring the sand. Most will be attached to the grains of sand and a lot of live rock and stuff like that on the surfaces, basically. But I do dose some bacteria now. Because I also run ozone, and I run a 110-watt UV sterilizer on this tank, which also contributes to the very clean look of the tank. But on the other hand, it might kind of nuke the beneficial bacteria over time, or at least lessen the diversity of it. And I'm dosing something called, what else is it called? Never mind, but it's bacteria from modern reef. It's called biodiversity. So I dose that once a week now, and then I turn off my skimmers, my ozone reactor, and my UV for, or is it like 24 hours or something?
Just so it can reestablish itself and populate.
Yeah. So you said
how important do you think UV sterilizer is? Sorry,
obviously
some people don't run UV sterilizers. Some people think they're quite aggressive, obviously, in terms of killing bacteria. But I think, personally, I think that they're a good bit of kit to run. Have you always run UV sterilizers? Would you run a tank without one? Do you think they actually are?
I wouldn't run a tank without one because I see no reason why you would, if you don't factor like cost or stuff like that. Since I don't think that there's a ton of people said, it'll nuke phytoplankton. Well, you don't have a lot of phytoplankton in your tank to begin with, so that won't do anything. And most of the beneficial bacteria will be on surfaces. So the stuff that'll probably get up in the water column are parasites and stuff like that. Different coral toxins and things of that nature, and that will break them down. So no, I wouldn't run a tank without one.
Interesting.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree with you. I would never run. I've ran a UV sterilizer on every, I say every tank. I've only had 2 tanks, but I ran it on my 170 and I ran it on this 350. And I mean, to be touch wood, I don't want to jinx myself, but I've never had any of my fish have never caught ick. They've never caught any parasites or anything like that. You know what I mean? And yet I have friends who've never run a UV sterilizer and they've always troubled with ick or things like that. So I definitely think it helps for sure. And I think if you like you said yourself, if you can run one, why not? You know what I mean? If you've got the space, why not just stick it in? You're helping you might as well just do it. You're helping yourself in the long run for sure because you're running that risk. You know what I mean? And like you said, a lot of the beneficial bacteria is either on the rock, the sand, stuff like that. Just not in the water column. It's all on surfaces. So I totally agree. You should definitely run one of them.
May I ask what the nutrients run at on your tank, Michael?
I try to keep my nitrates between 5 and 10 and phosphates around 0.04.
Yeah.
So that's basically what I shoot for. I don't believe that running 0 nitrates is a good idea. I like to have some nitrates.
Absolutely.
But I find if I go over, I had a faulty nitrate test kit that gave me faulty readings of 5 or something. Shit, I need dose nitrates. So dosing nitrates, nothing happened. I thought I'll send off an ICP test and see what's going on here. And they came back at 35 or something 3 weeks ago, and I was like, okay, so that's why my corals are kind of brown. Right, cool.
Yeah.
We've talked about this on the live stream. Remember, years and years ago, when you used to say, if you run a specific SPS tank, exactly like yourself, it's you want as low in nutrients as you can and stuff like that. Now, like you said, people's opinions now are beginning to change on not only things like raised nutrients, but also how vital higher pHs and stuff like that. I mean, this and like we spoke about before on live stream and in private, it's how different people's opinions change over time, as we learn more, especially in this hobby, and like you said, I believe every tank should run with some nutrients in it because you're asking for trouble with zero nutrients, zero nitrates.
Corals, aren't you?
You're starving your corals. That's basically what you're doing. It's like us eating a tiny little minuscule of food every day. It's just not. It just doesn't. It's not right. You know what I mean? And I run mine. I like to run mine like yourself, 10. I have a mixture, so it's different, but I mean, I like to run mine at 10, between 10 and 15 ppm, my nitrates, and then phosphates. I find the sweet spot at 0.07 for mine. If it drops below that, then I know straight away just by looking at SPS especially, they don't look as colourful, they look a bit dull and stuff like that. And then the moment I start to raise them, they seem to just come out. They just change, literally over that week. They just colour up a lot more. It's a lot better. So now that's what I tend to aim for. But like we said, you try to aim for something. You can never keep it at that time, at that specific point all the time. But as long as you're in that ballpark, for me especially, it's perfect.
I think my tank's similar to yours. I think, Michael. In the sense that I'm quite meticulous with the maintenance. I do a lot of maintenance each week, but I am heavy in. You said you feed really heavy, so I plow lots of food into mine.
Yeah.
And I'm doing a lot of sand cleaning, a lot of algae removal, filter removal. Is that how you keep yours, happy? So you're heavy,
I believe
heavy out.
Heavy out, yeah. That's definitely it. So I feed like between 6 and 8 cubes of frozen food every evening, and sheet of nori in the mornings, and 4 feedings of flakes and pellets throughout the day. So there's a ton of food going into this tank.
Yeah, but it is what 1,400 litres.
Yeah,
but, I mean, you certainly then still got to watch your bioload, haven't you? Even regardless of the size, it's all relative to those of the fish you've got and everything else. So let's.
So is this a skimmer and a filter roller, and what else is taking it out?
I have a skimmer, which is a Royal exclusive. What's it called? A Bubble King Supermarine 250 RD3 Speedy. So it's a beast of a skimmer. I have a automatic filter roller, a refugium. I do run GFO occasionally if I can see my phosphates going up a little bit, and I do have some zeolite in there as well for nitrate removal.
Yeah.
Wow. So and I do a 10-liter water change automatically every day.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
So basically use the Roa Phos and the nitrate remover just to tweak it a little bit. So you got your kind of bread and butter stuff you do all the time, and then if it's going up, you use that to bring it down. So it's not a permanent fixture, but you don't have to do anything drastic. You're just tweaking it as it goes before it gets too high, which makes
and I test my nutrients like once a month or something, so I'm not too fussed about that.
Yeah.
I can basically gauge how much nutrients is in the tank like based on the colors of the corals and like film algae on the glass. Often I have to do that.
Yeah, I agree.
Right, I just got a couple of questions. I'm going to go for this. So Steve, just got a question from John about the lionfish.
Yes, I know. You know what? Believe it or not, I had a hell of a lot of people about the lionfish. Like they were shocked in like what, like it was like what the hell? We never thought of that. But it is so. It has been a fish, that I've been fascinated with. In a sense of like they just look they look creepy, but they're also like mysterious, in a sense. The way I don't know why. I just think to myself, and then when I see this little dwarf one, I thought, right, well. Should I or should I not? Now I didn't have many fish in my tank, so I thought, well, it's not going to eat any of them. You know what I mean? They're all big enough, and this one's tiny. So I was like, should I? And to be honest, it's been a welcome addition. It's been a welcome addition, mate. You know what? I've had no problems with it so far. He's like swimming. He was a bit at first. He was a bit, hiding. He was hiding in the rocks, and he wasn't coming out. But now he seems to be coming out. He's feeding on. I've fed him his first shrimp the other day, so I defrosted a prawn, and I thought I had it in the tweezers, and I put it in, and I thought please eat it, and he did, so that was a good thing. But I know like what I've got to do with him. I've got to keep him fed so he stays away from certain fish. But a lot of people said about mandarins. I mean, mandarin, like he's going to eat a mandarin, but mandarins are poisonous. They secrete a poison out from the skin, so any fish that tries to go near it or tries to eat it, they don't even bother. They don't even entertain a mandarin fish. So, and I always wondered that, because all my other fish always stayed away from a mandarin fish. They never bothered it. They never done anything. And it was news to me that they secrete the poison. So, other than that, mate, he's done fine. He's kept himself to himself.
I thought it was due to the mandarin only having one eye.
Yeah. Well, he's got one eye as well. I don't understand that. He's got one eye, but no, he's been good, mate. He's been good. He's not been evicted yet, anyway. But we can soon sort that.
Keep him on probation. It's early days yet.
Yeah, he's on probation, mate.
Start picking at your shrimp. Surely he's going to pick your shrimp off.
I've not got shrimp, have I?
Oh, have you not got any shrimp at all?
No, not got shrimp. No. No, that's why I fed. That's why I fed. What I did put in, to be honest, is I went and I bought about river shrimp, river shrimp, and I bought. I think it was 30 shrimp, 30 river shrimp, and I stuck all them in it, So there's some of them floating about in the tank somewhere. So he's probably maybe picking them off as well. But like I said, I defrosted. They said a prawn, just a normal prawn. So I was like, what a frozen one or a fresh one, and they said they're not bothered either way. So I defrosted one, and I chopped it up and I gave it, and he swallowed it, mate. He was like right onto it. So it kept him happy. That's the main thing. And he does it. He seems to stay away from the fish. To be honest, he's not really that bothered. He just floats around, does his own thing, and seems peaceful so far. But like you said, only time will tell. But so far, so good. John. That's the main thing.
When people buy like miniature dogs, like is it gonna grow it says dwarf now, but then
and it turns into a lion.
Oh yeah.
Well, I hope not, mate.
Small, and then it turns out to be like huge.
People did miniature pigs, didn't they? They bought miniature pigs.
Yeah, that's it.
And all of a sudden, it turned into a big old thing. You're thinking, that's
peacock pigs, peacock pigs. Yeah,
I've had that happen to a friend of mine. It was just a plain old pig that they bought.
Yeah.
Tough.
Well, you know what? I hope to God that, like I said, he's a good. I hope to God he's a good model citizen, mate. That's what I hope, anyway. But like I said, only time will tell. But the good thing with lionfish is you can sneak up on them. They're quite like dozy, at the time. So I'm hoping that I could get me netting over time if that is the case. But I think he'll be okay. To be honest, he doesn't seem that bad.
We recommended lots of fish for you, like really nice, colourful.
We did a whole live stream, didn't we?
And then we had a whole live stream about it, and then you went and bought a lionfish.
I've got a few more fish in the pipeline, mate. I've already bought a couple more, so that's going to be coming up on another video. So I've got another couple more fish in the tank. So it's.
We definitely do have a puffer fish, surely, or something.
No, I've not got a puffer fish. No,
ridiculous.
No puffer fish. No. These ones you won't be surprised at. These ones you'll be good. It'll be good.
And what about the algae blenny? How's that doing? Has that been?
Yeah, he's doing well, mate. Yeah, he's still alive. He's thriving, eating the bits of algae and. Yeah, that's the problem, like with the tangs. The tangs just go around eating any sort. I mean, I've only got lower nutrients in my tank anyway. I've not really got high nutrients, in a way. But you still get that little tiny film of algae, the little algae that comes, just a tiny little bit of it. None of it on the rocks. It's just on the back, on the back wall and stuff. Yeah. And yet the tang, when the big tangs were in, they were just eating it constant all the time, just like relentless all day, 24 hours a day. They were just on it. So it kept it clean, so you didn't really see it. But because the tangs are no longer in there, you do see that film, so it's like beginning to annoy me now, in a sense of like I can see it. I can see the little film of algae, which I never saw before. So I need a fish on whereas the algae blenny, he's doing his best, but one algae blenny can't do it all. You know what I mean? He's like trying his best, mate, but he's working overtime. You know what I mean? He's working overtime and he just can't do it. So yeah, really, I need like you said, some algae in fish, which is compatible with my tank. Do you know what I mean? So we've got one, and he seems to be doing so far so good. And then I really need either a yellow tang.
Get some urchins. They're very fun.
Yeah. I mean, a yellow tang maybe, or a gen tang or something like that. I'm not going to go with the other genus, no chance. I'm going to go with them. They seem a lot more peaceful than the others, like I said before. So I think if I do get another tang, it's going to be one of them ones. But,
I think the yellow tang, but the problem is the cost of yellow tangs now.
I know.
When you go back in a day when they cost like 30.
Oh, mate, absolutely.
I don't know what kind of price a yellow tang is where you and Michael, but around in the UK they're kind of about £200.
Yeah,
no, they're about £500 here, I believe.
500.
Yeah, wow. Just about for a wild caught tang.
Wow.
That puts it in perspective, doesn't it?
By the way, you could perhaps look into not the cold tangs, but the tangs from the same genus. They're even better at eating algae than the Seaworsomas.
What I did, I mean, a lot of people have said to me, "What about? Have you ever tried like the Tamini tank? Because they seem to be like pleasant. They're pleasant enough. They seem to go well in like a community like tank. They're not aggressive, and stuff like that. And I have looked into them, to be honest, and I'm so on the edge of like maybe getting one of them, a Tamini tank, because I do like the color of them, obviously as well. But I thought, that fish, I've also read that it needs to be the last fish that I'm going to be putting in, into the tank, because they can become like very territorial if you add more fish after that one, which I suppose I like more tanks anyway. Most of the tanks are like that anyway. Yeah. But I have got a couple more fish that I wanted to add into it before they add the Tamini tank. But obviously I'd love to know your thoughts whether the Tamini tank would be okay to add into my tank, because they're small, aren't they? They're smaller than the others anyway.
They're very small. Very peaceful as well. So I don't think that you would have any issues having one of those in your tank.
Yeah. Yeah,
I have a Truncatus tang in this tank. You could probably get away with one of those as well. Right. It's definitely the best algae eater of any of the tanks that I've ever kept.
Really?
It looks like basically a cold tang. I wanted a cold tang initially, but I couldn't find one since Hawaii's closed down, so I ended up with a Truncatus.
Truncatus, right.
Have you seen the one that Finest Aquatics have got for the weekend? That the long nosed black tang. Have you seen that? Look at that.
No. Oh,
that's for sale this weekend, Steve. Look at that.
Wow. Yeah. That'll probably be out.
It looks ugly to me. I think.
Oh, here we go again. We had this last week, and an ugly fish.
It's an ugly fish, that is, isn't it?
Yeah. I've never really understood the appeal with those things, to be honest. I think they're way overrated, and they're quite pricey as well. So I don't really get them.
Yeah.
No. I mean, if it was the choice between that and a yellow tang, I know what I'd go for it anyway.
I'd go yellow every
to be honest.
day of the week. Absolutely. I love yellow tangs. I just think they're such a lovely.
Yeah. My missus looks like yellow tang.
Yeah.
My missus looks. She misses it.
Long nose. I've never seen long nose before. I was like, what the hell is that? I've never seen a fish like that before.
No.
Yeah.
No.
And I was just like, I don't know. It just looks ugly to me.
I know what you mean.
No.
I don't really like tanks anyway. I'm all about the butterflies and the angels. That's why I like Michael's Reef, because he's got so many of like the fish that I'd love to have.
I would listen if you know, honest to God, if I swear to God, if I could have any fish in my tank, any fish, I would go out and buy it tomorrow. If I knew that the corals would be safe, and that would be like a flame angel, something like that, yeah. But I know that they'll just take a liking to some of the corals, like some of the prize corals. And that's why I'd stay away from them, mate. Right? No, it's like I love angelfish. I absolutely love it. Absolutely love them, mate. All sorts of angelfish. I love them. They just look fantastic. But I couldn't have them. I mean, how you get away with Michael out with them, like not eating him? I know you feed heavily and stuff like that, granted, but like, did they not like take a nip? Have you never seen them taking a nip at one of them or anything like that?
They nip constantly, but corals are getting nipped constantly in the wild as well, and they can handle it fine. But the thing is also that I don't have like any micromusas in here or lobos or things of that nature, and I wouldn't put any of those corals in here because the chances would be too high that something would go sideways. But with acros, torches, goniporas, and frog spawn, I've never had any issues with any angels whatsoever.
Yeah.
Well, I always thought that like, I mean, I had what was it called, the fish that I had, the angel, and it died, not the flame angel, the
Coral Beauty.
The Coral Beauty, the Coral Beauty. I had the Coral Beauty, and originally, and I never had any issues with that Coral Beauty. I've never seen it nip at anything, and then unfortunately, when power went out, and when I was out on a weekend, and I came home and the tank had obviously shut off, and that was one that succumbed. You know what I mean? So that died, unfortunately. But I never had an issue, and then I was going to replace it, and then. Obviously, I started to decide on which way I was going, the path where I was going with mixed reef and stuff. And then I thought, right, well, I'm not going to get one of them because, like you said, you read up on things. And I thought, maybe I was stupid putting that in at first. But I never had any issues. And now you hear about it all the time. Say, don't get a Coral Beauty. Coral Beauty is the worst thing for X this and X that. And a Flame Angel, don't get one of them because that'll definitely chew on this. And so you just tend to stay away. Or it says reef safe with caution, like most companies say, reef safe with caution. So I tend to just stay away from the angelfish, unfortunately. But I would love. There's no doubt. If I knew that all my corals would be safe, I would go out and buy a Flame Angel. No doubt. I'll go out tomorrow and buy one, no matter what the price is, because I just think they look absolutely stunning, those sort of fish. But like I said, you just don't want, like I said last week, I'm more for, like you obviously love your fish and stuff because you got a load of fish in there, mixed variety and stuff. I like a reef. I like the corals. I'm more for the corals myself. Not saying that I'm not for the fish, but I just love like all different species of corals in my tank. But like I said, if I could get away with an angel, I absolutely would do. I'll put one in tomorrow. But it's just the risk.
What I'm going to go through some comments, and then there's a question from John. I'm going to come back to John's question in a minute. I just want to go through a few comments. Yeah, so we're talking about kind of curing dinoflagellates. We're using the UV, but you have to have a different flow, don't you? The flow is slightly different for dinos than it is for disease. And then let's go for it. I'll come back to that one, Ryan, because I know you've asked that question twice. And then you've got kind of using pods and other ways of getting rid of dinos. Pods there. Good cleanup crew, which is pods. If you could hit the likes, that would be great. Thank you. And again, people talking about snails, which I think is a lot of things like pods, cleanup crew, all those kind of things are good for your algae and other things like that. My yellow-eyed coal tank keeps the tank algae free. Tamini's spot on, and don't either my scopies or purple will put them in. So another vote there. Yellow tang, yellow coal tang. Bonkers money, because someone's put something along here about, I think it's 300, 350. So obviously I'm out of touch with a yellow tang and the price of them, because I thought that was about 200. But someone else, Drippy, doesn't like the black tang, like a
Robbie Reliant.
I just don't get it. Obviously it's a rare fish, but
it is.
It's an ugly looking fish, really, isn't it, to be honest?
Beauty in the eye of the beholder, Jay.
Well, yeah, I suppose. I said this about rabbit fish. I don't like the look of rabbit fish.
No, I don't like them either.
Oh, yes, somebody else. I love them. They don't look right, do they? They look like two fish.
No, I don't like the look of them at all for whatever reason. I've had a couple, but I've always found them ugly.
Yeah, I agree, Michael. Can I also ask a question? What salt do you use in your reef?
I've tried a bunch. What I've ended up with is Aquaforest reef salt. I think that has the best price versus quality on the market. I've tried some salts that are like I think I've tried the I'm not going to name any names because I'm going to be talking about them in kind of a negative way. But
Michael, if you don't like something, if we don't like something, we go out and say likewise.
Absolutely,
if we think something's really good,
there's no sponsorship.
None of us are sponsored in any way. So if we like something, we say this is great. And if it doesn't work, we say we don't like it because of X, Y, Z. And other people may like it. So it's not a problem. We say, I don't like it because of X, Y, Z.
Basically, I've never really had any bad experiences. The Super Premium Salt, I believe it was about, say, 110, 120 euros for a bucket. Wasn't anything wrong with it, but I saw nothing in terms of positive effects when I tried that.
So basically value for money. You didn't see
exactly. In terms of salts that I don't like, I used to use Red Sea salts. Don't like that whatsoever. Really, since I have a big mixing bin, I have a couple of 100 liters, and it looks so freaking dirty after like a couple of months or something. I've been running the Aquaforce salts now, and that bin for, I believe it's like a year since I cleaned it, and I can just now see some like little brown buildup on the bottom.
It's interesting because a lot of the nice tanks, I know obviously with yours, Steve, I used to, before I knew you, I used to look at your tank and think that's a really nice tank. Its corals are healthy. And a lot of the time when you ask this, it is Aquaforest. I don't run Aquaforest. Do you run Aquaforest like dosing products as well? Or just... No,
I'm completely on the Modern Reef, what's it called? Balanced Consumption System, RKS. So I'm only running Modern Reef additives.
Right.
It's the guys on Eurocorals. So it's
I've heard more. That's becoming more popular in the UK as well. It's something that's relatively new, I think, certainly compared to others. But I'm seeing more on Instagram and Facebook where people are saying that they're using Modern Reef. So it seems to be. But there's so many different ones. If you go into the LFS, certainly. If I look at AAC, which I use, and you guys have the amount of different supplements and different
it's a minefield. It's
just phenomenal. There's more and more coming out. It seems to be all the time. And which ones you choose because there's so many.
Well, I ended up with Modern Reef based on two things. Firstly, they're actually a coral farm as well, since it's Eurocoral, so they have a vested interest in providing good products since they'll use them themselves. Or I guess three things. I reached out to the owner and had a chat with him about their products, and he was very forthcoming and open and honest. The third is that I wanted to simplify my system because I was like doing a lot of shit. Previously, I was dosing like Acro Power, Caulk Water, I had a balling, and I was dosing a bunch of like different weird additives. So I was using like 12 or 14 pump heads or something. It was just like annoying to keep track of everything. The basic benefit of this is that it's 4 jugs, the balling solution, 2 KH solutions or alkaline solutions, 1 calcium and 1 magnesium, and it also contains amino acids and vitamins. So I can just get rid of all the aminos and the vitamin supplements and stuff like that. Well.
Oh, your dosing pumps as well, yeah.
So you simplified it in effect.
Yeah, and they have 2 additives as well, which is based off of KH consumption. So I can basically, since I run a KH director from GHL, which tests my water and automatically adjusts the doses of different things. So I can automate everything just based on my KH consumption, even coral foods and stuff like that. So it's very hassle-free.
So, mate, we had this debate the last 2 or 3 weeks about would you trust
the
monitor that monitors your KH to then automatically adjust what else you're dosing. So do you do that, Mike? Do you trust the machine to do that?
I didn't trust it. Yeah, I didn't trust it initially. So I let it run for about a month or 3 weeks and just checked it with my HANA checker, and it was always spot on. And then I switched over to automated dosing, and I kept measuring, and I was still spot on. There's some alkalinity monitors I wouldn't trust, but I only run GHL gear, and I trust their quality, basically. So I feel quite confident that it won't really screw anything up.
Yeah. We talk about that a lot, about would we trust the machine, and you know, the monitors have been out for a little while, but they're still quite early, aren't they, in their development compared to other, you know, LEDs and other stuff like that. So, you know, you're talking about 2nd, 3rd generation in some respects, aren't you, which is relatively immature in the market. So that's a lot of trust you're placing in one machine.
Yeah, definitely. I also keep up with like probe maintenance and stuff like that. I won't let that slide, so I calibrate it monthly.
Right.
I think when people run into trouble with stuff, I mean, there's obviously bad equipment and stuff that'll screw you over, but it's more or less often the case that it's complacency, that you don't really take care of making sure that everything is in line. It's like with dosing pumps. I mean, I calibrate my dosing heads monthly because they always drift. All dosing heads will drift over time because the hose and stuff will perhaps kink or like change the shape of it over time. So
and they can calcify as well, can't they? As well, so it affects the flow that goes through as well.
Mine did that actually. Mine calcified, and then the alkalinity drop. Obviously, alkalinity dropped because it was the alkalinity dosing line.
Yeah.
It just has a big impact.
I mean, I had it with my Calquasso. You know, the line that was going through that. Obviously, I mean, I'm only running like two I think it's 2.2 liters a day of the Calquasso anyway. Basically, now I was running it just to raise me to reduce my consumption of the aquaforest stuff, but then I changed my mind over time, and it was basically to raise my pH because I always had problems with my pH, and now since dosing Calquasso, pH never dropped below like 8.1 sorry, so always like 8.3 range, 8.32 and stuff like that. But I had the same thing where for some reason my alkalinity was dropping and dropping, and I was like, what the hell, you know, like this was before I forgot to switch it back on, which I did the other day. I forgot to switch the thing up when I filled it up, and then I realized that, you know, the around the bottom of the tip where it comes out, it had actually like gone dead hard, and it wasn't coming out. It was like calcium, you know, like as if it's like gone. You could see it all, but the drip wasn't coming through, and it was like, what the hell's going on here? You know, like with it.
Yeah.
So obviously now I look at it and I always wipe it off. You know, every couple of days, just give it a bit of a wipe down. Yeah, dump it in the water and just wash whatever the Calquasso is on the tip of it.
It's solidified.
And make sure it cleans because it goes rock solid, mate. You know, with it, it's crazy.
I did that. I had a fairly big Deltec cold water stir, and I had it outside of my sump, and I forgot to clean the tip off.
The tip,
which made it just kept dosing water into it, so all the water just overflowed down on the room of my sump.
Oh no!
Yeah. It is. It's so something so simple. You just take for granted. You think, oh, it's going to work, and like you said, that's why. Like for me, I would never, I could never, like you said, you put your trust in that GHL and stuff, and they've been around for years and years, haven't they? The GHL, fantastic stuff, and things like that. But I mean, there's certain companies who, you know, they have the dosing pump. I'm not going to mention all names, but like you said, who not been around that long, and you can risk dosing, you know, using their machines to adjust the dose. And no, I'm sorry, I leave mine to. I have the KH Keeper, which gives me a rough guide of the alkalinity, and as long as my alkalinity is stable, for me, everything else should just fall into place. You know what I mean? And it does seem to fall into place. To be honest, calcium and magnesium all seem to be fine, but as long as my alkalinity is right, I'm happy with that.
Yeah. Right, I'm just going to, because John's question goes back a little bit. So this was around when we were talking about air stones and bubble. This is about could you run it continuously in a sump? Because his understanding is that you shouldn't really run an air stone in your tank permanently, and it should only be for a short period. So in terms of bubbling, how often do you do it for, Michael, each time?
About an hour or so.
Okay. Yeah,
I do have friends who run it every night. I mean, they don't stir the sand bed up every night, obviously, but they run it every night just to get some detritus off the sand bed and increase pH. But I don't see any benefit of running one continuously. Firstly, you will get a ton of ugly microbubbles in your tank and probably huge amounts of salt creep as well, because when those little bubbles burst, they always splash up some salt on your stuff, basically. So, not really any benefit of running it one continuously.
Yeah, absolutely. When you used to do the bubbles, Steve, how long did you do it for? Was it a couple of hours, or did you do it overnight?
Who, me?
Yeah.
Oh no! I literally maybe 30 minutes or so. I used to just raise the pump out head, you know, the pump power head just out of the water slightly, so it's sucking in air, and it was just like literally 30 minutes or so just to get it, and then just towards the end of the night, you know, when the lights are going out, and then leave it, and then that was it. Then I used to just put the pump back in, but it was nothing like that. Nothing like what Michael did. No, nothing. It was like literally 30 minutes or so, and then. But like you said, for me, it just seemed it definitely improved, especially the SPS. I don't really know much about maybe the LPS and the soft. It didn't really do much for them, but SPS, the following day you could see like the polyp extension was a lot more extended. They just seem a lot happier, you know what I mean? And I should get back onto that, to be honest, because I've not done it as much as I used to. I used to do it at least once or twice a week, but now I maybe do it once every month or so. Maybe, you know, really should get back into it, because it definitely helped, especially like I said, the SPS.
Fair enough.
It should be more prevalent in the hobby. I mean, it's kind of an old school technique.
It's old school. It's old school, yeah. Yeah,
it's like Kalkwasser, but Kalkwasser has kind of had a renaissance as well.
Yeah, it certainly has. Certainly,
that Julian Sprung and all that, he used to religiously. I watched a thing, and he used to swear by it. Bubble Scrubber, he used to say it all the time. Everybody should do it, and it was on one of the things that I watched with him talking about it. I can't remember. I think he did a program. Was it with Sanjay Ghoshi? Is it Sanjay Ghoshi or something like that? He did a 1-to-1 with him, like talking about it. And he said like he used to do bubble scrubbing all the time, you know, on his tanks. And like you said, it's just come back like Kalkwasser. I went to the local things and went to my local LFS, and they was talking about it, and he was like, what do you want this for? And I was like, oh, I'm thinking of going Kalkwasser. And he went, is this suddenly come back into like the fashion sort of thing of, you know, of reefing? Because this used to be done like 15, 20 years ago, and now all of a sudden people seem to be coming back into it. And I'm like, well, you know what? Since I've been doing it, now I'm thinking I should have done this years ago. I should have done this ages and ages ago. Do you know what I mean? Because it was just like, it's just totally changed my tank, you know, in terms of, like I said, I think that's the big part is for the pH, to be honest.
And I think that's what triggered it, Steve. There was quite a few videos from BRS talking about pH. You take your pH up by 0.2.
0.2,
increases it by more than that percentage. And pH in the, you know, 40, I think they've done some experiments, 40-50% more growth by 0.2. And of course, then if you're in a house, you're limited. How can you increase it? You know, you open your windows, there's only so much you can do. You put pH in, a CO2 scrubber can take it up a little bit, because I run one in the garage, that's up by 0.2. Calc, especially when you can control it, you can run it pretty much at, you run yours, what, 8.2, 8.3 continuously, don't you?
8.3,
switch it on and off based on the pH.
8.3 now. Well, so because it's linked to it's linked to my Apex, because like I was getting 8.4, you know, 8.4 to 8.45, you know, on my since dosing cow cancer. So I linked it to my Apex now, where it switches off if it goes to 8.3. So it switches the Versa off, the you know, so yeah, I've seen, so I've got it dialed in now, and like I said, my tank just, well, you guys know anyway, I'm just forever snapping SPS, and and it's such a shame because obviously I don't have a flag tank, and it's a waste, and I shouldn't do it really, but like, it's just, I snap them and I throw them, or I put them, you know, in the bin. It's such a shame because, but not many people want, like, you know, Satosa and, you know, the cheaper SPS, you know what I mean, which I think look fantastic, by the way. You know, but they are like so quick growing, so fast growing, and not many people really want it. So it just grows so fast. But I have no option.
You shut off your cold water at 8.3. Those are baby numbers.
I know, yeah. What 8.56? Wow. Holy moly! Right, well, I'm gonna go down in a minute. I'm gonna adjust my Apex to 8.5 then.
Yeah, but Steve, you don't want them growing any quicker.
Hey, no, exactly. Yeah, true. That's it. I don't want to grow it any quicker faster. Yeah, I need a bigger tank. I need one like you, Michael. I need one like you.
You should be dosing vinegar or something to like bring the acidity up or something to lower the pH.
Mate, absolutely, mate. Absolutely. Right, I'm sorry, but I'm gonna have to love you and leave you because my family have come round, so I'm gonna have to leave you. But here's my little grandson, by the way. Anyway, he's being fed. So where is he? Is he there?
Lovely.
Gorgeous.
Take his bottle out. There he is. 3 weeks old.
Bless.
He wants his bottle back.
He's calling me Grandad Coral for the time being. So yeah, Grandad Coral, mate. So yeah, I'm gonna have to love you and leave you all. But it's been fantastic. Thanks for joining, Michael. Anyway, I appreciate it, mate. Take care. God bless. Take care, guys.
Have a good
one. See you later, mate. So I was going to ask, right? So Michael, you've got one of the best tanks I've ever seen, right? And I want to know as many secrets that you know about doing well with a reef tank. So if you're like a new reefer, or even someone who's been reefing for a while, what are your top tips to having a really stunning reef like you've got? That's what I want to know. That's why I've joined tonight. I want to know the tips, the shortcuts, the things that I should be doing, you know, to get a high quality reef tank.
All right. Let's see here. I
know I've put you on the spot, so I do apologize about that, but I do want.
I'll just have a think about that for one moment. I'd say that don't try to fight nature. I feel like a lot of people are trying to like go against nature in some different respects. They're trying to bomb their nutrients down to like 0 and things of that nature. Try to work with nature rather than against. For example, if you have algae and stuff like that, don't dose any weird fluconazole or whatever people are dosing, or what are called like vibrant and things of that nature. Rather, look to natural means if possible. But I mean, be diligent with your maintenance. That's probably the biggest thing, really. And sounds like you are, so I think you're well on the right track. Set specific things that you have to get done every week, and never skip on those, regardless what happens. There might be a good football game on, or you might got a lot of work to do or something. If I have a lot of work to do, I'll stay up until 2 in the morning to get my shit done. I'll get some sleep that night. But since I promised myself that these are the things that will get done week after week, I won't move an inch from that.
So what are those things, Michael? What are those kind of things?
Tell us about the week.
What are the immovable objects that you make sure you have to do, even if it's 2 a.m?
We're going to find out. We're going to find out all the secrets here.
So, for example, the sand cleaning, to get all that detritus out, that's one thing I'll never skimp out on. When I was doing water changes manually, I would do them every Sunday after my wife woke up and she took care of our daughter. Regardless if it was sunny out, if we had stuff to do, I would do them, or I would do them later if I couldn't get it done in the mornings. Alkaline is one thing I've always tested, like at least 2 times a week or something, before I got the automatic monitor. What else? Let's see here. What do I do apart from that? Feed high quality stuff to your fish and corals. Don't skimp out on food. Bad food. Nutrition is extremely important for fish. Make sure, I think I feed 8 or 9 types of pellets to my fish daily and a couple of different flakes, just to get a very wide range of nutrients in them.
So it's the variety. I know some people just feed mysis all the time, and then been trying to mix up, I suppose, vegetation, vegetables, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
They eat,
and I think, get good gear. That's another thing.
You clearly spent a lot of money on yours by the looks of it. Yeah. And
there's a fair amount of money sunk into this thing. Don't tell the wife.
It looks good.
Yeah.
Generally, what you put into something is what you'll get out of it. In terms of effort, in terms of money. I'm not a big. If I'm talking, I've been mentoring a guy here. He was posting on a local forum, and I liked his approach. It was like I really want to learn and stuff. So this is what I want to achieve. We wanted a full-blown SPS tank. He'd never kept a tank before. So like, okay, this is going to be fun. And he said, like, I have a fairly high budget, and I'm willing to do what it takes. So okay, I'll reach out to this guy, and I told him that I'll be your personal mentor for your tank, and let's set you up right. So, you can't expect really great results if you aren't willing to spend the money, unfortunately. And it kind of sounds jaded to say that a reef tank has to be extremely expensive and things of that nature, but it all depends. If you want an awesome reef tank, you can't really do it for cheap. If you want to buy an awesome car, you can't buy an awesome car for cheap. It's just the nature of the beast.
I suppose it's your definition of awesome, because you can keep a really lovely tank with softies and zoas and stuff like that.
Definitely.
And you don't need the same kind of equipment that maybe you would invest in the tank that's behind you, for example. Because, you can be a little more relaxed, can't you, with softies and zoas and some of the hardy LPS like candy canes or war corals and those, whereby you don't have to have the top gear to do those, and some people keep SPS, but it's that flex, isn't it? And you've invested a lot, and you've got a lovely tank, but you need the due diligence as well. Having the most expensive kit doesn't equal a good tank.
No, that won't get you far if you're skimping out on maintenance and just those boring, very repetitive tasks.
I think it's good to hear that honesty. A beautiful reef tank is very, it does cost money. The kit does, the corals do. The maintenance, it is, I know some people, when they join it, you think, I'm going to have that. But you do have to invest quite a significant amount of money to generate a nice reef. That is the truth, isn't it, really?
It is. You have to take into account, what's your goal with this? If your goal is to have a full-blown SPS tank, it's going to be a huge tank. Then it's going to cost a decent car or something like that. The first tank I ever set up when I was 12 or 13, it had T8 lighting, it had some softies, It had a internal skimmer and some like freshwater power heads and live rock. And I thought that was an awesome tank because that was basically my goal when I set up that tank. So you have to kind of match your expectations to what you're able to achieve as well.
Yeah.
But you can enjoy the hobby just as much with that sort of tank, can't you?
Definitely. I loved my time with that tank. It was an awesome tank.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thank you very much for your tips there. Thank you very much.
Go through some questions. So Ryan's been patient. He's asked this a couple of times about how's the mariculture SPS doing.
They are doing
about it. Put them in.
Yeah, they're doing very well, thank you. They're all attached to the rockwork now, and they have some very nice polyp extension. The only issue is when you're bringing in mariculture to SPS, they will always, first they'll come in very light because they always lose color during chipping, but then they'll tend to lose their vibrant coloration for anywhere between 2 to 6 months or something. So I would calculate they'll take at least like 4 months or something before they're really bounced back and really looking good. But in terms of health, they're awesome.
But you can get that with, if you buy SPS from your local store, and of course you bring them home, you put them in your tent, the conditions are completely different in that stores, in which case then you can see them colour out a little bit and you think what's going on, then it take a long time. You may not get it back to that colour that was in that shop. They may take a different variety of colour because your tank is completely different. But
that's definitely true. I believe in terms of mariculture SPS, it has a lot to do with both parameters, but mainly lighting. Since we're all running LEDs at this, most of us are at least at this point. I didn't see that issue when I was running halides because they mimic the sun a hell of a lot better than LEDs do. So it's a completely different light spectrum in terms of illuminating your corals when you have LEDs. So that's probably takes them longer to adapt.
Yeah. Okay.
And I actually just switched over to LEDs. So I didn't really like the opinionated reefer wrote. He used a massive blanket of light rather than puck style lights, and I didn't really like how LEDs looked until Giesman released this Aurora V12, which has let's see here,
a blanket.
So it has 4 focus pucks, which gives like the shimmer and like punch, and then it has like huge diffused sections as well.
So you've got a more even spread with the pucks. You've got the overlap, haven't you? And you can not dead spots, but you can have lower power. Whereas when you've got that, and a lot of people have used the reef brights like you have, Jay, around the edges that gives that better spread, but also a more even spread.
I think he's hit something nail on the head there. The blanket of light makes a huge difference to the coral health, the colory corals. I've never thought about it like that, but I think opinionated reefers hit something there with that comment. A blanket of light really does help your reefs, the health of the reef, doesn't it?
Because what we need to consider is I still feel that the gold standard in lighting, I don't think that they're LEDs, at least for the very foreseeable future, I guess the next decade or so, they won't match the quality of lighting that you can get from metal halides combined with T5s. They'll beat LEDs any day of the week, and just in terms of coral health growth and quality of lighting. But they have a lot of drawbacks as well. That's why I don't use it.
So I suppose that blend of having pucks plus the spread will get as close as you possibly can.
Exactly, and that actually mimics how light works in the wild or in nature as well, because the sun is the very focused light and the sky is the diffused light. So,
and it goes back to that point of trying to replicate nature, doesn't it, and use nature to your advantage, and that's what you're trying to do with your lighting there. You've got a huge blanket of light behind you there that is going across the whole tank there.
Well, I suppose you don't have much shade because you do find with the pucks, and I've got that problem in one of the tanks in the garage, and I'm going to put a different light where I've got an XR15. It's a small one, but it's an old one. It's a Gen 3. So you're talking about this is 8-year-old.
Right,
I've got an SPS, and one side's grey, and the other isn't. So I'm just going to put, it's only a Red Sea Reefer 170. So I've got a spare XR30, again, a Gen 3. I can put that on, and that will spread the pucks. And on a small tank, it will be fine. I'm not looking for more power. I'm just looking for better better spread on it, and that's what you'll get with that, and you get better health, don't you? Because all round they're getting the light, so therefore you're not getting a shaded side that could then actually go and affect the whole of that that particular frag. So that's a fair point. Okay.
This is where the AI blades. I mean, I haven't got an AI blade, but they seem to. That's what they're bringing to the party, isn't it? As well, the more of the even spread of light. By the
yeah.
There's more and more of them, isn't there? Because you've got the Reef Factory.
Yeah.
Are not massive in the UK. Oops.
I knocked my light over.
Oh dear.
One second.
YouTube light.
Yeah.
Right, I'm just gonna go down some comments, and then we've got some questions. Yes, my yellow tang is so AAC is a local fish store near me, and I had a 5-foot tank with a yellow tang in it. But the biggest tank I've got at the moment is a 3-foot tank, and I didn't want to put the yellow tang in there. So the LFS has got my yellow tang. He's had it since June last year, because at some point I'll get a big tang. So I don't know how long he'll have it.
I heard Paul's in Florida and he's sold it, hasn't he? I think.
No, he won't sell it. I hope not. Anyway, he could easily swap it over, and I wouldn't know the difference.
Is it Aquashella? Is Aquashella? Has he gone?
No, he went to Reef. He was at Reeferpalooza in Florida last weekend.
Yeah.
He's back now, I think. Let's just go.
I'm just going to go and grab another beer. You guys hold the fort.
Yeah, go for another beer, mate. Yeah, definitely.
We're talking about
Red Sea
salt earlier on, because I've used Red Sea Blue. I had Red Sea Pro when I first started, but didn't really need it. And I've got Red Sea Blue, and I must admit, I've had no problem with it whatsoever. I've got to say, with the kind of dirt, so I clean out the containers once every 6 months.
Yeah,
I don't really notice it too much, but then it doesn't really stay that long in the containers. But
I do get the. I mean, I use Tropic Marin, and I do get the little brown ring a little bit. I was hoping he was going to say he's Tropic Marin Pro, but obviously he doesn't. I was hoping to. It's reassuring that you've got the same salts and things like that. But but I do get a little brown ring. But is that? Someone said it's because it uses natural seawater. Is that right?
Yes. So there's a few comments about we just go earlier on talking about Red Sea salt.
The brown ring.
Because I use Red Sea, and I must admit I don't notice too much about the kind of like the dirty ring or whatever is around that on that. But I think it hasn't been an issue for me. But then that's your dirt is because it's made from natural seawater.
Chris Allen.
Opinions. If it works for you, then why change? I suppose.
Chris Allen's turned it to an inappropriate reef chat now.
Oh, is he?
Yeah,
as they do.
Right. It's because we're talking about the residue on the.
Yeah, you find if you don't clean the buckets, the RODI water will look brown when you mix it with the new salt.
Yeah, I try and rinse my bucket every time, but
I must admit, every so often I'll just use citric acid on the containers.
Oh dear. Clean them up.
I do that because where I store some of the water, they're clear, and you can see sometimes you get some, and quite often the buckets or the containers are in the garden.
Yeah.
So they're a bit dirty, and I just kind of rinse them out with citric acid, with some tap water, mix it up. Half hour later, shake it about a little bit, and they're nice and clean. I just do that every so often, and it works quite well. So that works. I've got a question here from John. Do you use Miracle Mud in trays in your refugium? My corals are looking much better after adding mine.
I do use something very akin to Miracle Mud. I use Aquaforce Life Source, which is mud from Fiji, I believe. I used to use Miracle Mud in the past, but now I'm using the Miracle Mud, the Life Source.
Yeah, because you swear by Miracle Mud, don't you, Jayla? You put a little pea size in your tank every so often.
The Fiji mud. So if my nutrients are low in the tank, I'll put a bit of Fiji mud in there. The chap who in the UK who I bought my chalice from, he said, dose mud. Naturally you get these kind of muds, salt from the salt marshes that wash onto the reefs as a natural process. Going back to your point about trying to do things naturally. And the mineralization and the nutrients are there. The corals respond really well to it. So I've done it, and I dose it perhaps once every 4 weeks, and and it also makes the water really clear as well when you dose a little bit more.
It's a flocculant, so
it seems crazy, but I've done it. I've enjoyed it, and a couple of people, love to reef, Paul.
Yeah.
A couple of people have asked me to bring some mud down, so I might just bring my tub of mud and.
That seems a bit weird, doesn't it? Can you bring some mud
get it in
down?
the UK. I think they banned the extraction of the muds from that area of Fiji where they were coming from, because it was causing kind of damage to habitat and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So,
I wasn't too sure if it wasn't just that people weren't importing it. I didn't realise there was a ban on the extraction. But I mean, you got a massive pot of it and it will last you a decade. I've still got quite a bit of the stuff that you gave me. I just put a pea size in this tank every so often, which is only 100 litres. So I'm going to keep hold of it, because if you can't get it, it's been quite precious.
Right. But the coloration from the corals after the muds, it just, you can see that there's a response there. It seems to work.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's a question for you. Is there any fish that you want that you haven't actually got?
That is a good
What's
question.
on your wish list for fish?
A conger eel. I would like to go fishing for conger eels. Not in my tank though. Yes, I do have some bucket list fish that I don't currently have, and those are basically the ones I'm reserving a spot for. A Southern Mortis butterfly. I used to have one in this tank, but it croaked during Christmas when I was away. It did great for several months. It's those teardrop Adonis butterflies. They're yellow with a blue teardrop around their eye. But when I got home, it was looking horrible. I believe it got some sort of a bacterial infection and died because of that. Again, like the Regal Angel, I saw those on the same dive sites when I was diving in the Red Sea, so that's why they kind of stuck in my head. But apart from a summer butterfly, a banded angel, which is out of Hawaii, so they're stupidly priced these days. I tried to find one, but I couldn't find. My LFS couldn't source me one, but the only price it could give me was around 2,300 euros or something for one.
Wow.
So I'm holding out for one of those. I remember them being like 800 euros or something way back when.
So they've always been expensive. It's just that
they've always been expensive. I can definitely see myself paying 800 euros for a fish, but when you're getting up to 2,000, it's kind of a hard sell.
This sort of thing? Is this what you're talking about?
Yep, exactly.
Banded
and a tinkerai butterfly, which is unfortunately also from Hawaii and a deep water species. But I have but my LFS is trying to find me one of those as well.
So you certainly like your angelfish.
Yep, angelfish and butterfly fish. And stuff that you don't typically see because I find them more exciting, basically.
Yeah.
And there's the Tinkerai. I assume it's the first one.
Yeah.
Yep, that's the first one.
Yeah. That's beautiful. And
I like the one below the first one, if that's the same fish.
Yeah, that's the same.
Yeah, that is pretty cool. That's cool. Yeah.
There are some more easily available. I believe it's called the Burgess butterfly or something like that. But it's not nearly as cool as the Tinkerai.
I mean, that is
Burgess.
Burgess.
There we go.
Oh, okay. I prefer the previous one. I must admit.
Yeah,
I don't think Jay's not going to like this one.
I prefer the Tinkerai, definitely. That one is, that one's not.
The Tinkerai is a hell of a lot more expensive as well. So
we have expensive taste. That's what it is. How much is the Tinkerai then in euros?
Let's see here. I believe I got a quote, but they couldn't find me one. But the only price point they could give me was around 700 euros or something.
Oh God! Wow.
Because we was talking about this the other day. Because we've paid for corals like 250, £300 for chalice, rainbow chalice. But would we pay that a kind of money for a fish? And this, I think we discussed it last week.
We said no, didn't we? Basically,
and we said we wouldn't pay that for a fish, but we'd pay it for a coral, which you can argue is a bit bizarre because both of them could croak. I mean,
but you can't frag a fish.
That is true.
Yes. There's more money to be made.
Absolutely,
Or you might. I mean, you might have a technique for that. I don't think I can swing
that. In half.
Breeding fish in aquariums is very challenging, isn't it? As we know.
Yeah, screw that. It's too much hassle.
too much hassle. Yeah,
it absolutely.
Is.
But I'm planning on perhaps starting up a smaller tank with things like pipefish, like LPS, cocoa worms, and stuff like that as well. So I have some, and I really want a blue spotted jawfish for that tank. Those are really cool.
I want a jawfish. That's on my hit list. I love one, but they're quite challenging to keep, I believe.
I don't think they're that hard to keep. There's some debate if they can handle higher temperatures because they're off like the coast of Mexico. So it's kind of slightly cooler for most of the year than we keep typical reef tank temperatures. So I think that, and they do have something that's just dubbed like blue spotted jawfish disease, which is some sort of weird bacterial infection that will wipe them out sometimes.
Yeah, because you also mentioned me the other day garden eels as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, garden eels.
I'd love some garden eels. I really would, but you've got to have like really deep sandbed, and obviously you've got to have a big tank for that. But they are so cool, aren't they?
Exactly, and get like 3 or 4 of those, and a jawfish, and then just some cocoa worms. What are those called? Those little anemones. Rock flowers.
They're superb. Yeah. You get such a range of them. You see the rainbow ones, and they're a lot easier to keep. And as we said before, they obviously do move, but nowhere near as much as a bubble tip or others. So they tend to stay in position a bit more, don't they? So you can just put them around the base of the rock work, and they'll just pop.
Yep. And I can't keep rock flowers in this tank because my carpal band will eat them, unfortunately.
Yeah. I know on Fragbox TV, he goes to the Aquashell or whatever it was, and he looks at a tank with the rock flowers in, and the colours are just incredible. There's a tank with about 20 kind of specimens, and they're all just popping colour. They just look really nice, don't they?
They're lovely. Yeah. Absolutely.
And you can have some cool stuff like sexy shrimps and those little porcelain crabs and stuff as well, living in them.
Yeah. So basically, you'll have stuff that you can't keep behind you.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are stuff that I can't keep in this tank, or at least I won't keep in this tank. For example, certain LPS won't handle the flow in this tank too well. And I don't really have any large experience when it comes to LPS. So it would be nice to experiment with that as well.
Yeah. I must admit, I love scollies. But I mean, in the UK, they're very difficult to get scollies because there's an import ban on most scollies.
Difficult. This is because they're on some sort of a red list from Australia or something?
Yes. Yeah, I don't know the detail, but certainly there's a restriction compared to how they were. They're more freely available. I don't know if it's 1, 2, 3 years ago, but I just think scollies are just lovely. But you obviously don't think you can keep them with angelfish very well because they just love the flesh. Not sure.
Probably not.
I wouldn't take the risk. I wouldn't take the risk. Put it that way.
I could be convinced to try, but I would probably build like a cage out of egg crate first, so I could quickly just put it around the skull if I see any bad behavior. I've kept clams and stuff in this tank as well in the past without any issues. So they're not that bad that most people think, but they could potentially go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Right,
can I ask a couple of questions? I've got a couple of questions still. Do you know your tank? Is it custom made, and is it a peninsula, or because it seems to have like 2 backs? It seems to have 2 backs to it, like one on this side on the left, and then.
Yes, it's custom made, and yes, it's a peninsula. So the overflow is on that side here.
Yeah.
So that's a balcony overflow or a shadow overflow, and you can actually walk around, but it's
you get round the back of it. That's what I was wondering. Yeah. And is it a back? Is it like yes, I can see. Yeah.
So did you consider having a peninsula where you don't have it?
See, this is what I like.
So you'd have a kind of a true peninsula, I suppose, when you could see from 3 sides, or was that not really a consideration?
For me, no. I really couldn't keep a peninsula. I really want a peninsula where you can see through the tank as well.
Yeah.
But I don't have any good spots in this house for a peninsula, for a peninsula tank of this size at least.
Yeah. Is it backlit? Do you backlight it as well for photography?
No, I don't.
Oh, right. Okay. So that leads me on to my other question. Like, your pictures are incredible. like really bright, really colourful.
Thank you.
What are you using for your photography, and are you using software as well, or just the iPhone?
Yeah, the iPhone and a yellow filter, and I use an app called let's see here. It's called and I usually use the native editor in iOS, but now I use something called Hash Photos. Which kind of helps get rid of some of the grain when you're filming under LEDs and stuff like that.
And is that an app, is it, or is that a piece of software?
It's just an app.
I need to so you take your photo, you import it into the app, and then you just be able to. I suppose you've got a standard kind of how you remove it and the kind of levels that you take on it.
What's it? Sorry, what's the app called again? Sorry.
Hash Photos.
Hash
Photos.
I'm just seeing if it's on.
Right. Android. So while you're looking at that, I'm going to go through some comments. So Tracy, her and the zoo are using their telly bed. So we had a conversation a few weeks ago about if you had a telly bed. So basically, at the end of your bed, you have a TV that comes up, and it's quite posh. So people tell us when they're watching the live stream on the TV and in bed, basically.
It's no one. Only really rich people have telly beds, I'm sure.
Yeah, Steve's got one, hasn't he? Because he was talking about having a tank in his bedroom, weren't we? We were saying no, that's just too much, the noise and the blue and everything else. We're going to get some comments there around life source is great, which is what you were referring to earlier on. And then, how do you use the life source mud?
I use it. I basically take an entire bag of life source and I put it in a big, like a kitchen tray in my sump. So I don't broadcast it in the tank. So I just let it dissolve slowly over time in my sump.
Oh no!
So how long does that usually sit in the sump for? Does it take long for it to dissolve?
Yeah, it takes like 3 or 4 months at least. And I kind of get in there, just poke around with my finger just to get some more action into it.
Yeah, to help dissolve on its way. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm annoyed. Hash Photos is only on iOS. It's not on Android. Damn.
Oh, that's a hard fail.
I need a new phone now. This is not good.
You do.
It's
a bit extreme though, isn't it? Just getting a new iPhone.
Yeah, I assume that's the app there, isn't it?
Yep, it is.
Yeah, it's not available on Android. It's just...
crap. I believe there's another app called... I asked a friend of mine who's pretty good at this stuff. It's called Lightroom or something. That might
Lightroom. Lightroom, that's Adobe, isn't it?
Yeah, I've heard of Lightroom.
Yeah, I believe it's so.
Yeah, it's Adobe. You'd have to pay for that, Jay, Lightroom.
Oh, that's it then. I'm not doing that. I'm very tight with money when it comes
I think you do. If it's an Adobe product...
I've heard of Lightroom. I have Lightroom, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Unfortunately, you have to pay for Hash Photos as well.
Oh, do you? Yeah.
Yeah,
because you're very good at photographing your reef. Obviously, it's a beautiful reef, but you're very good at capturing the colours and the beauty of the reef. So
thank you. Absolutely. And I think it also helps that I run a fairly, in terms of what people are running their tanks nowadays, I run a very wide spectrum.
Yes. Yeah.
Which
that always helps photography. Yeah. When I photograph my reef on the Radiant, I photograph it around 8,000, 9,000 K. I know a lot of people do it like 18,000, which is very blue and it's really fluorescent. Yep. But I always think the best photography looks, almost like natural whites, as it were.
Yep.
With a tinge of blue, but mainly whites. Yeah, I agree with you there. I think it does.
Yeah. There's a good comment here about every system is different. We need to see how our tanks are happy and then keep it the best as you can. Absolutely. Yeah.
Very, very true.
More TV chat.
No, we don't.
And then the going back to the butterflies that were shown on screen, are they reef safe?
I hate the term reef safe because it describes nothing.
Okay.
I mean, no fish are I really can't answer that question. I mean, they could definitely pick at stuff in your reef. But the term reef safe, I wouldn't define any fish as reef safe because tanks can go for corals. I've had clownfish host goniopores to death. So aren't clownfish reef safe in that case? They can kill corals.
That's a fair point. I had to take a torch out because it was just killing a couple of the heads. With Duncans, they're fine. There's certain corals that don't mind clowns, but there's a lot, like you say, that don't like the clowns just messing, which they do, don't they? And torches don't seem to like it either. But yeah, it's a fair
point. But in terms of answering the question, which I not to be an asshole, I'm sorry if I came off that way, but the Chinkra butterfly is from the what's it called? It's not called it's called the Mesozoic zone, where it's quite dark. Yeah, so there's not a lot of corals down there. So corals aren't part of their natural diet. So they should be relatively good with corals. I guess they could go for like LPS if you're unlucky. I wouldn't hesitate to put any butterflies basically with SPS. I've even considered putting in some obligate corallivores in here, like they only feed on corals, and I think they would be fine as well because I have enough corals, and I think I could convert them to standard aquarium fare to keep them fairly full.
Yeah.
So if you mostly have an SPS, I wouldn't hesitate to put one of those butterflies in your tank.
I think it's key from what you're saying is the size of the tank, because the size then determines how many corals you got. And if you've got a broadcast of loads of corals, if they nip at each individual one, it's not going to make a difference. But if you've got 2 or 3 frags, then they're going to nip at 2 or 3 frags, and the frags are probably going to die because they just get too upset. And the frags are more delicate, arguably, than colonies in that respect. And they can take a bit more of a nip, shall we say.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay. It's about that sustainability, isn't it? Allowing for some nipping, but you've always got the scale of the reef helps, doesn't it, to limit the damage to the entire reef.
Yeah. Right, we're up to date with the comments. I'm just going to go back to see if I've missed any, and then come back to that. So in terms of what's next for that tank, obviously you got some fish. Is it a case of just watching it evolve, putting some more corals in, and just keeping it as stable as possible, and enjoying it and watching it grow out?
I prefer not having a ton of too many corals. I would rather have large colonies, so I won't be adding too many more corals to this tank. I would rather see the ones that I have grow out into really big ones, like this size, like a couple of fists big at least, each and every colony. So I think I have room for, say, 3 or 4 more aqua colonies in here. That's probably it in terms of corals. It's probably those fish. Maybe if I stumble on something really cool, I could add more smaller fish if I wanted to, so that might also be an option. I've been considering like a fairly big school of chromis. It looks kind of cool when they're shooting in out of your acros, so that might be an option.
Yeah,
but just basically curate what I've got is probably the most close to heart at this point.
Yeah, because you've got quite a mix of smaller fish, haven't you? Because I noticed you've got some different amphias. You got some damsels, but it was like 3 or 4 Springer damsels. But I had Springer damsel. I had 7 in a 5-foot tank, and they were fine. So there was lots of rock work, and they all had their own spots. If I moved a piece of rock, that would be it. They would all go into meltdown because one of them then wouldn't have a space.
Exactly.
And so therefore, and they're very territorial. So they were the last fish I ever added to that tank. Because my fear, and if I even put some wrasse or anything more in there, they would just attack anything that was territorial as well. You see that quite often where people put damsels in quite early in the reef, and then they wonder why they just tear up the. Yeah, absolutely. But would you put some more amphias in, or do you think you've got the right balance of amphias?
I can probably put some. Oh shit! My computer is about to die. I'll just plug it in. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
It's gonna drop out.
Yeah. So Jay, would you like a tank like that? 1,200, is that 1,400 litre tank?
That is the dream. It's the dream reef tank, isn't it? I think he's done it so tastefully in the sense that you've got these somewhat minimalistic aquascape in 2 islands.
Yeah.
There's no clutter on the sandbed, which is something that I've got resorted to in my nano. But I love the fact that Michael just keeps the sandbed like pristine, and the amount of space for the fish to swim I'm a bit envious of that as well. There's a lot of open water in the reef tank of Michael's, which I think just looks it's beautifully balanced with the scape, clean sandbed, and the room for fish. Yeah, I'm very envious. It is like the dream reef, and I like peninsulas. The only thing I would have done different perhaps is I'd perhaps backlight it a bit more, but obviously Michael doesn't. He doesn't think that, but. I think backlight. If I had the same sort of reef, I'd try and backlight it just to, because you get that really, with coral. Is it coral zoa? Coral.
Yeah.
He backlights his, and it looks like really light blue water.
Yeah.
I really like that effect as well. But yeah, Michael's got my dream reef, basically. Yeah.
You're far too kind, man.
No.
Do you think you could have run a tank like that, say 10 years ago? Or is it taking you this number of years to get that experience to be at this point, to be able to blend things together into what people see as a iconic tank?
In terms of logistics, I probably wouldn't be able to, because I wouldn't live in a house big enough to have a separate sump room and everything like that.
Yeah.
In terms of knowledge, perhaps I would probably struggle a lot more than I do now. So it would really be difficult to run this kind of tank in back. Probably would be successful when I think about it. Yeah. And in terms of Amphias, I'm definitely considering adding more of those. I have a mix of Bimaculotheus, lyre tails, and Disparanthias. And I would like to add some more purple queens, the Toucanthias, perhaps. Those would be very cool. Or just more Disparanthias, because the purple queens are going to be a major headache because they're super sensitive.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. Them and the other one that's from Australia, which I can't remember the name. There's a couple that are really quite.
The ventralis one.
That's the ones, that are quite.
Yeah, those are awesome. I know some people who has a couple of them. Most of them have bought like 5, and they end up with 1 or 2, and they're very expensive as well. So.
Yeah. Are they sensitive because of just the feeding regimes, or they don't travel very well?
I think it's a combination. I mean, most of the fish that we consider as very difficult take most of the punishment in the supply chain because they're not fed enough, for example. And most of the fish that we do consider to be sensitive are benthic feeders or planktonic feeders. So they either just go around picking at rock work all day and they're used to having a constant supply of food, or swing around in the water column eating plankton, also have a constant supply of food. So I think they take a hell of a lot of damage in the supply chain, because you can't feed fish when you're shipping them, because they'll just foul the water and die.
Yeah.
But then when you get them, it's also, you have to keep up with feedings. I know some people who has kept purple queens, and they've had really elaborate systems to feed like frozen foods and live foods for them on a automatic basis. So it's going to be a ball ache for sure, but they're beautiful, so it might be worth it.
Yeah. I suppose you'd have to order those in, wouldn't you? There'd have to be a special order, I'm assuming.
Yes, you would be a pretty stupid businessman to order those owning an LFS, because they're probably going to die on you, and they're not cheap. So
yeah, you want to order them, get them in,
get them out
once they've settled a little bit, and you've got them feeding. Especially as you say, they come through the supply chain and they're probably quite thin, and then you need to kind of beef them up a bit before you sell them.
And that's the problem with like copper bands and more shilohs and stuff like that as well. I mean, more shilohs aren't terribly difficult. But they have a tendency to arrive in fairly poor condition. So that probably eliminates half of everything that makes it into the trade, and the rest are just fed enough when they get into reefers' tanks, and then they just die because of that.
Yeah, so they're already on the kind of losing game because they're thin and they're not fed as they should be. Okay. Jay, was you going to ask something?
No. You've answered it, I think. I don't know what I was going to ask, actually. Can't remember. I think it was something ridiculous about, just people coming around to his house and, friends, family. They must be like, how do I get one of these in my house? How do I get one of these saltwater tanks? And you must be like, well, just be a bit careful, because they're not as easy, you're not as easy
Most of the friends that I have, I've been friends with for a long time, so they have kind of a good idea of what this thing requires of you. So they tend not to ask. But when my wife brings people over, they're like, "Oh, I want to have this." Like, you probably don't, honestly.
Yeah, because as soon as you see that, as soon as you come round to your house, I'd be like, right, I need one of these in my house. But then, they don't realise the.
The cost for start. When people realise the cost for starters,
then
you've got the running
buy a
cost,
very nice car,
and then you've got the diligence that you need. You put those three together. That's quite a specialist, isn't it?
Yeah.
In that respect, at that level,
it's gorgeous. We're all lucky to have these reef tanks in our house, but yeah, it's a privilege, isn't it? It's such a privilege to.
I think so. I love the hobby.
I love it. Absolutely love the hobby. And
it's not a hobby; it's a lifestyle.
I said to my wife,
think you're right. Yeah,
my wife the other week, I said, I'm never going to be without a reef tank in my life now. Okay, now since I've got one and I've enjoyed the hobby so much, I've got the bug. I'm here to stay now. It's a privilege. Absolutely.
Yeah, I took a break for 4 years when I moved to Stockholm, just because of logistics, and it freaking sucked being without a reef tank.
Yeah.
It's just the life it adds. I mean, I had a 5-foot tank here. My wife hates this tank. She absolutely hates it. She goes, "You've got no tangs in it, no decent fish. It's just rubbish." I love the tanks. I'm actually enjoying having a small tank in
the Nano is good. The Nano is also good.
Yeah, she loved the fight. She loved the 5-foot tank because it just, we had.
No. You want a big tank. You want a really big tank. At least 1,000 liters. That's what you want.
I see Jill would go for that. She would love to have like a 6-7 foot peninsula. Yeah. And I'm sitting there thinking, do I want 1,000 liters? And I'm not at this stage. I'm not convinced. I will go again with a bigger tank, but at the moment, I'm loving having 3 smaller tanks, and the biggest one's 280 liters, and they all look very different, all do different things, and I just experiment. I'm just at that point in a hobby where I just try different things, and I'm not fussed about a tang or anything like that at the moment. But I'm sure I'll come back to it. Right.
Honestly, you're probably spending more time in your tanks than I am, since I only have one system.
Absolutely. I think if I had one bigger tank, it would probably take less time than the 3 tanks in terms of the maintenance and everything else that goes on. But
I think I'd only have one tank. But Michael, I've really enjoyed tonight and enjoyed sharing a beer together. It's been good. And,
it's been a pleasure, guys.
Yeah. Thank you very much. So thank you for everyone who's watching. I think I caught up with the chat and answered all the questions. Thank you as always, the regulars and the people for the first time. Yeah, Michael, been an absolute pleasure. We talked a little while ago about getting you onto a Friday night live stream because we admire your tank and the experience you've got. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anytime, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you, everyone. Cheers. Have a great weekend in the UK. It's a bank holiday weekend, so no work for a lot of people until Tuesday, including you. So have a good weekend, everyone.